everybody, welcome to Wild Boy Movies, the place to talk movies. Excuse the lighting for this set. I'm filming this while I'm waiting for that Wicked for Good trailer to drop online so I can make a video on it. But while waiting for that, some news came up that, yeah, I definitely have to go ahead and make this video because it is about the Saw franchise and how the franchise is essentially coming back after its latest installment, Saw 11, that was in development, got cancelled. What I'm going to be doing in this video is breaking down this news that just came out like a few minutes ago, as well as speculate where things could go, whether Saw 11 actually ends up happening now, or we're getting a full-on reboot. But be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below your thoughts on this newest Saw news. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so if you haven't been keeping up with the Saw news, back in March of 2025, it was announced that Lionsgate would no longer be moving forward with Saw 11, essentially meaning Saw 11 got cancelled, and I was pretty upset by that because I really liked Saw X. It is my favorite film of the franchise, and I couldn't wait to see where they decided to go next with the story, especially since it was a John Kramer-centered story where it essentially was him as the hero getting back at some scammers, and I feel like that set up Saw 11 pretty well, and I think it would have been good in-between film between Saw 2 and Saw 3, or if you want to say timeline-wise, in between Saw 2 and 3 and 4. But we are not getting that. Lionsgate decided not to move forward with that, removed Saw 11 from its release calendar and replaced it with The Strangers Chapter 2. And it has been dead silence for the Saw franchise for several months. We saw like a post from Billy the Puppet on his LinkedIn saying that he was #employed, but nothing has come up since. Until now, where Deadline is going ahead and reporting that Blumhouse Productions is in negotiations to acquire the Saw franchise away from Twisted Pictures. Now, if you don't know who Blumhouse is, that's fine, but you might be familiar with some of their work because they're the studio behind the Purge series, the Happy Death Day series, the Megan series, and even the Five Nights at Freddy's movies that are going on right now. And in fact, I think Blumhouse is going to have a killer end of the year with Megan 2.0, Black Phone 2, and Five Nights at Freddy's 2. But here, with Blumhouse possibly going ahead and getting the Saw franchise, I think it is good because to me, in my opinion, I think Blumhouse are the kings of horror movies. From all the movies that I've seen, there isn't really a bad one. Now, I do admit that some of the Blumhouse movies don't get the greatest of reviews, but some of those movies that don't get the greatest of reviews, I still end up liking. So I think Blumhouse is a good fit for the Saw franchise, and it makes sense for them for acquiring this particular franchise. Because let's not forget, Blumhouse and Lionsgate do have a deal together where they'll go ahead and take a look at some of Lionsgate's IPs and turn them into some new horror movies. We know that Lionsgate and Blumhouse are working on a new Blair Witch movie that we haven't heard anything since CinemaCon 2024. And Lionsgate is the ones behind the Saw franchise, and they do say in this article that Lionsgate will still hold on to the distribution rights of the Saw franchise. So whenever we get this Blumhouse Saw movie, it will be with Lionsgate and not with Universal. So there's that. But another thing that makes sense here is because of the franchise's creator or co-creator, James Wan, who is behind the production company Atomic Monster, which did merge with Blumhouse, and now both companies will be working together to bring about some new horror movies. I know through that deal we got the Megan series, and I know that we're getting the new Mummy movie from Lee Cronin next year over at Warner Bros. And New Line. So I think it makes sense that James Wan, who was the director of the original Saw movie from 2004, would be coming back to this franchise with Blumhouse, because not only did he co-create the franchise, but he was also a part of the Atomic Monster production company that he is working with Jason Blum at Blumhouse over at. And like I said earlier, I am so happy that Blumhouse is currently in negotiations to take the Saw franchise and just buy them out. But that leads me to question, whenever Blumhouse decides it's time to make a new Saw movie, what will they end up doing? I don't think that they'll go ahead and revisit some loose ends from the previous movies. Like, unfortunately, no. I don't think Blumhouse will give us Spiral 2, which I honestly would really want a sequel to Spiral just because, yeah, I did like that movie, and I wanted to know what happened to Zeke Banks after the ending of that movie. That is Chris Rock's character. But I don't think that's going to be happening, along with Jigsaw 2 or a continuation from Saw 3D. But those aren't happening. The two likely options that we could see from Saw under Blumhouse is one, Saw 11 going back into production and making the movie that they wanted to make. That continues on the story that was left off from Saw X, where Cecilia, the head of the scam, goes after John Kramer for revenge. That I honestly would hope ends up happening just because I really want to see how that story continues on and not have a Saw cliche of tell a story that has sort of loose ends and just abandoning it. We had that with Jigsaw and Spiral. And for Saw 11, I would want Hoffman to have a much bigger role just because, yeah, I am happy that we got that Hoffman cameo in the post-credit scene of Saw X. I would have wanted him to have a more significant role, even to have him interact with Amanda a bit more. But even though I do want this to be the likely option that we get Saw 11 like the studio wanted to make, I don't think that will be the route Blumhouse goes. I think the studio, Blumhouse, is likely gonna go ahead and wipe the slate clean and give us a full-on reboot just because it's Blumhouse taking over the Saw franchise. They probably want to do something new with the franchise and not rely on all this complicated lore that has been established over the past 21 years. And also, Tobin Bell isn't getting any younger, and I do think that Saw 11, if it had happened, might have been one of the last times we got Tobin Bell as John Kramer just because the actor isn't really getting any younger. But yeah, if they go ahead and reboot the Saw franchise, they have some tough shoes to fill in. Not only for replacing Tobin Bell as John Kramer, who did an amazing job as that character, really cemented John Kramer in the lineup of horror icons, but you also have a completely new story to tell and a new lore to start. But if James Wan goes ahead and decides to direct this next Saw movie, I hope he does good because I can't imagine the Saw fans being disappointed if James Wan, one of the co-creators of the franchise, makes a bad movie. But that really is everything that we got for the Saw franchise as of right now. I cannot be more excited to see where they go next. And let me know down in the comment section, would you prefer Saw 11 like we originally would have wanted, or a complete reboot? And I'm telling you now, I think they're gonna go down the reboot route and just start all over. So prepare yourselves if they decide to announce a Saw reboot, just prepare for that. But also be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned on the channel tomorrow for my Wicked for Good trailer video. But until then, have a great day.